My name is Jason Spector. I am, my day job is I'm the chief of the division of plastic surgery across the street at Cornell, where I was operating this morning. Glad I made it back in time to come and give the presentation because the CEO of Fesarius Therapeutics, Tom Richer, could not make it, but fortunately it was just across the river. So I'm happy to talk about a company that I co-founded back in 2015. And we've done a lot of work. So you got an engineering description before. We're going to talk a little bit about wounds. What are dermal regeneration templates? Well, the problem is when you lose the full thickness of skin, and that's both layers. The skin is comprised of the epidermis, which is kind of like the saran wrap, prevents you from dehydrating, keeps things out. And it's a really thin layer, but then the dermis makes up the bulk of your skin thickness. It makes up the bulk of your skin's strength. And so you can re-epithelialize partial thickness wounds, but when you lose the entire thickness, the body cannot regenerate dermis. And what does that mean? Well, when you heal after, let's say, a burn like this patient, and you don't have dermal replacement, you get that thick hypertrophic scarring. You get contractures, which can be very functionally disabling, and it looks awful, and plus it feels awful to the patient as well. So about 25 years ago, dermal regenerative templates were developed, and what they were made to do was they could regenerate dermis. Well, how do they do that? They were collagen-based. You'd place them on the wound after full thickness skin loss, and then after 2 to 3 weeks of the body slowly growing into it, it was finally ready. You could come back and top it off with a really thin split thickness skin graft. And 30 years ago, that was a great breakthrough in terms of how we could reconstruct patients. And when it works, a dermal template really results in the generation of a functional dermis, and that changes how patients do, obviously, because a reconstituted dermis, having dermis is the crucial metric in terms of reconstructive success. And I can say that because I do a lot of reconstruction, so I know. Now, Integra is the company that developed dermal regenerative templates, like I said, about 30 years ago, and it's still the dominant player in the marketplace. I've used a ton of Integra. I'm my hospital's largest user of Integra, so I know it in and out. And over the years, I was very frustrated by the performance. You had to wait at least 2 to 3 weeks so you could come back and close the wound finally. Obviously, a lot can happen in those 2 to 3 weeks. The patients can be immobilized. They can develop an infection because anything that the body can grow into, certainly bacteria can get into. So, that was frustrating to have to come back and do 2 surgeries. So that made me think, I wonder if there is something that was a little bit better. Now, again, just a little bit more on wound healing. You need cell invasion into your matrix, and you need neovascularization. That is the sine qua non of wound healing. Without new blood vessel formation, you will not get wound healing. And Integra's DRT really has been the only product. You get this question all the time from investors. Well, there's 150 wound care products. 149 of them don't regenerate things. I will give Integra. It regenerates dermis when it works. The other things, maybe at best, increase reepithelialization, contracture, but I have not seen as a reconstructive surgeon and the PI of the lab a product that demonstrates regeneration other than Integra. Here's another case study. This is a burn, full thickness skin loss, exposed tendons in the back of the hand. Put Integra on it, said, all right, I'm not going to have to do any more fancy reconstructive surgery. I'll wait a few weeks for it to vascularize. We'll come back, we'll put a skin graft on. Well, the skin graft didn't take over the area where those tendons were because those tendons didn't provide a good enough blood supply. So Integra failed, so we had to go back and do a more complicated surgery. So let me tell you about Dermosphere. Dermosphere is a revolutionary one-step dermal regenerative template. Right now I have to do 2 surgeries, like I told you. I put the Integra on, I wait 2 to 3 weeks, I go back to the OR. That's suboptimal. Dermosphere vascularizes so rapidly, and I can tell you, both when I was a resident, a long time ago, and as an attending, I've had multiple companies push their products, say, look, we can do this all in one stage. I can tell you that does not exist. If it did exist, there'd be lots of papers written, and you could look it up in PubMed. All the simultaneously placed dermal templates and skin grafts doesn't exist. However, Dermosphere, and we have lots of preclinical data to demonstrate this, allows the surgeon to reconstruct the dermis and epidermis, both layers of skin in one surgery. So dramatic reduction in healing time. You go from waiting 14 to 21 days to waiting 0 to 5 days. So patients don't have to be immobilized, significantly decreases the risk of infection. And so this really is a disruptive technology in the field of reconstructive surgery, something that has not been seen in several decades. So what is the market? The existing market, there's about 200,000 procedures a year involving reconstruction after full thickness skin loss, and that's surgical excision, that's trauma, that's burns, infection. These are conservative estimates, so it's about $1 billion market. We firmly believe, and I know this because many of my colleagues across the country who are also plastic surgeons who are doing these types of surgeries say, well, if I can do this in one step and I can reconstitute the full thickness of skin and have my patients feel better, functionally better, look better, I'm going to do it. So we think we're going to capture a lot more people, because if you have full thickness skin loss and you're just putting a split thickness skin graft on, which has a tiny fraction of dermis, you may end up looking like that patient. So there would be no reason you wouldn't do that. And again, at my hospital, we have a very large burn unit. They don't like Integra because in the 2 to 3 weeks, you have to wait for that to vascularize. Chances are it gets infected. So they've all but given up using dermal templates for that reason. Now, what's the technology? This was IP that came out of my lab about 12 years ago. And it's really simple. It depends upon the response of cells to interfaces of differential density in collagen. It was kind of a chance observation that fortunately we were prepared to capitalize upon, and we took this and turned it into several patents. And again, glad to see we have a representative from Cooley, because they've been very good to us and have helped us develop a very solid IP protection. So again, just in a table form to show you, skin graft alone, which is pretty much the standard treatment for many surgeons because they don't want to wait for Integra, they don't want to risk getting infection. You don't get the dermal layer. You don't get the improved functional and aesthetic outcomes. Sure, you get a quick closure and you don't get secondary surgery, but it won't work in the more challenging areas where we have exposed bone, tendon, or hardware. Dermosphere, all the green checks, tells you it really improves outcomes. So it's not just using it as a sheet gel. We have a flowable formulation, the same technology with a couple tweaks you can use in a flowable form. That's another large market. Why is that different? Well, because there are certain wounds that have geometric topographies that won't respond as well, so we can use it as a flowable. Then there's the injectable market, so something that flows can not only be applied topically but injected. And that's a huge market, I know, because in my office I'm using hyaluronic acid a lot, and that is a $8 billion market and growing by about 10 to 12% every year. So our material has a lot of promise as an injectable application, not only for aesthetic applications, which is the huge market, but reconstructive applications as well, as you can see in post-lumpectomy or this patient with scleroderma. So it really is going to significantly impact surgeons' practice. Now, the sheet gel and the flowable will be 510K pathways, which is a much more straightforward and less costly pathway. Of course, the injectable will be a PMA pathway because all injectables are PMA pathways. So the flowable, you have your diabetic foot ulcer and other types of wounds that would benefit from it, whereas the injectable market, as I said, we have here, well, 9.8 billion. You'd see a range between $8 and $10 billion. And it's a more durable alternative to the current HA fillers, which have to be reapplied pretty much every year, if not every other year. So this is a summary of our progress to date. We were founded in 2015. 2017, our lab opened up at the Downstate Incubator. We have been fortunate to get about $6 million in convertible note funding thus far. We've gotten about $6 million from SBIR non-dilutive funding. We are currently in another $6 million convertible note, which should finance us through the end of 2025. But most importantly, we are looking at FDA authorization on our first 2 devices middle of next year. This is the team. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, sorry I showed up. Our CEO couldn't make it today, but I hope I gave you some insights into why we're so excited about this transformational product. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting product. I realized why I didn't go to medical school after seeing that photograph. I realized I pass out when I donate blood. It's not for the faint of heart, but a really impressive product. Could you, just like we asked the last presenter, could you just talk a bit about what the ultimate goal is? Are you planning with the funding you've raised and what you're closing on now to go through the full 510K FDA regulatory process, or do you think you might potentially partner with other like corporate partners or investors earlier?
So we've had discussions with large strategics, but we certainly have funding even without the $6 million tranche to get through our planned authorization middle of next year. The purpose of the current round is to get us through the end of 2025, where we will have acquired sufficient human data. So for 510K, I didn't know this when I started this, you don't need human data. You just need preclinical data and safety data. So by the end of 2024, and we've arranged for key opinion leaders. Again, fortunately, I have lots of friends who are plastic surgeons across the country at large medical centers who are waiting to use Dermosphere. We will have hopefully, 50, 60 or more patients, actual human data, which will not only significantly, de-risk, but you have that data, then your value goes way up. So the pivot point for us will be by the end of 2025 when it's time to scale up our sales and marketing force, because right now we have planned 8 to 12 regional managers, and then we'll have 1099s, and 1099s are independent, contractors. And the beauty is, in terms of surgeons using the product, it's the same exact use. There's no difference in what I would do as the surgeon applying this as I would Integra. So we don't need a marketing force out there that has to teach them what to do. They know what to do. So we're well positioned from that perspective.
Can you talk a little bit about the team? So I assume you're a full-time surgeon. It's the rest of your team. Is anyone full-time at the company?
Yeah, no, we have a very full-time. So I didn't get all into the team because I didn't know how much time we had. So our CEO, Tom Ruchet, is experienced, has had 30 plus years in the medical device industry. He's been the CEO of companies in the orthopedic space. He joined us in 2021. Our board is comprised similarly of senior executives who have decades of experience at companies like ACell, other, cardiac companies. So Yulia Sapir-Lekovitzer, who's our chief science officer, is sitting right behind you. One thing I can tell you is that everybody in this picture are full-time. We have 6 full-time employees. We've only had one person leave, and she wanted to go to school. Nobody's left since 2018 when they all joined, and it's a terrific group. And we're also fortunate, again, we didn't get here without, we have a product development person who, even though we've been working with them for 6 years and full-time, fortunately through Zoom, we don't have to meet. We have regulatory strategy consultants who have led us through the process, and multiple other coding consultants, because we have to figure out, okay, once we're approved, of course CMS pays for your product once you're approved, and we're going to be in hospital first before we get into the complexities of office application, office coding.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.